So on today's episode, I wanted to talk about tracking your expenses. Tracking your expenses is obviously like the biggest component of keeping your budget, because if you don't track your expenses, there's no way to know if you're meeting your goals and spending your money how you want to spend it. I'm kind of like really, it's like one of the main things that I'm constantly tracking our expenses, like every day, always, every dollar we spend. It's like really, really important to me. And I think it should be important to everybody who has goals that they want to meet, which I think is most people. But before we get into the details of this episode, I wanted to give my frugal tip of the week. So I'm trying to give one frugal tip each week that I hope will be helpful to people. And my frugal tip for this week is don't buy soda or drinks when you go out to dinner, especially if you have a large family. This is something that we started doing. First of all, we hardly ever go out to dinner, like really, really rarely. Really rarely. We have a family of 5 and my kids are ages 14 to 19. So it's basically like 5 adults going out to dinner, which adds up really quickly. But anyway, when we do go out, we try and not spend too much money on the dinner because it can get really expensive. So one area where we save money, which we've pretty much stuck to for a while now, is not buying soda for the whole family for like when we get our meal, we just get water. Because if you think about it, with tax and tip, I think on average I calculated a soda costs like $3.20 per person, because it's the soda plus the tax plus the tip on top of it. So if you have a family of 5, that's like $16. And that could be like an appetizer or a dessert. I mean, obviously not a dessert for everyone, but usually if we get dessert, we'll get like 1 or 2 desserts tops and we'll share it. We don't usually get dessert anyway because you get so much food. But anyway, so that could be an appetizer if you want, or that's just $16 that you could save. You could buy like 3 bottles of soda for the kids to have as a treat at home if you wanted to with that, or more bottles of soda than that. But anyway, so that's my frugal tip of the week. If you're going out to dinner, consider not getting sodas or that, like any type of like paid drink for the family, and just get water, and you'll save probably $16 to $20 right there, depending on the cost of the drinks that you were going to purchase. So anyway, back to tracking your expenses. So there's lots of different ways that you can track your expenses, and I'm always reading about different tips and techniques and things like that. And there's really a perfect way, obviously, to track your expenses, and you have to do it in a way that works for you. But the most important thing is that you're tracking them as you go along. Because if you wait until after the spending is done to see how you compare it to budget, usually that doesn't work. If you're like me anyway. Maybe for some people it does. But for me, I found that if I wait until the spending is done and then I go back to see how we did for the month, we always came in way over. It never worked out to kind of be like, okay, let's see how we did, because I'd always be disappointed. We always spent way more than I thought we did, because things add up so quickly. You each day, like day to day, like, okay, well, I only spent $5 or I only spent $10, and you kind of forget about all those little things. And then when you add it all up, you're like, oh my gosh, we came in so much over our budget. So I just think it's really, really important, really, really important to track your spending to your budget as you're going along, and don't wait until the end. So there's different ways you could do this. I use a spreadsheet. What I do is I actually have like a running total of our projected checking account, which starts from like the beginning of the year and it goes all the way to the end of the year. So I basically have like our whole year plotted out as the money comes in, what bills are going out, and like our general weekly spending. And it shows like the projected checking balance at any of those points in time. Mine is really super detailed. It doesn't have to be that way. Most people do it on like a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis. I just like to see like what the whole year looks like, so that's why I do it that way. But so you can use a spreadsheet to track your expenses. You can use an app, or you can use the cash envelope system. So I guess we'll just start with the spreadsheet. So how I do it in my spreadsheet is I have, like I said, I have the whole year laid out. I show like, basically has like opening checking balance, and then like there's like two columns. One's like budget and one's actual. And then down the side, it'll be like paycheck, mortgage, you know, auto insurance, cable bill, utilities. It has like every single bill and like the date of when I expect it to happen. So I sort the spreadsheet by like date order so that the checking projected balance is kind of like in date order of how I expect things to happen. And then I have also like a bi-weekly spending budget, which I have just roughly like by the date that I get my paycheck. I got to kind of put this lump amount in for the 2-week period that my paycheck covers. And then what I do is I have a separate tab then of that weekly budget. So then that's kind of separately categorized. Like I know how much of that bi-weekly amount that I have available for like gas, groceries, and my sinking funds. I have a whole separate episode on sinking funds, but my sinking fund funding is part of that weekly budget amount. So each week I'm putting aside for different things that we're either saving for or for things that occur, you know, at different times during the year. We need to kind of like save up for those things. That might be something like an annual vet visit for your pets, or just, you know, things that don't happen like regularly every week or every month. So I keep those all separate. So then what I do is during the week as we're going along, well, before the week even starts, first what I do is I apply all my money to the sinking funds, and then I estimate how much I'm going to spend for groceries, how much we're going to spend for gas, and then I see like how much we have left. So I know if it's going to be like a really tight week, like say if I know one of my kids has an unexpected thing going on, like maybe my daughter is going to have like some Girl Scout event that I wasn't planning for, and maybe that's going to be like $25 or something like that. So I know at the beginning of the week, like that's coming this week, I need to anticipate spending that $25. So in my spreadsheet, I will list out any of those unusual items that are going to happen this week that I wasn't planning on. So I'll project out how much we have left to go in the week. And then based on that, I have in my mind like how much we kind of can spend. Like, do we really have to kind of hold off on everything this week and really just kind of keep tight because we know that it's going to be limited because of those extra things, or do we have a little extra that we might be able to spend? Now, we don't really spend extra just to spend extra, but if I know like, I don't know, like I needed to get something for my horse's halter. I needed to buy like a leather punch and it was like $10. So like, but I didn't really like need it. So I knew I had like at least an extra $10 in the weekly budget. So I decided to buy it. But that's something where like, if we were going to be really tight that week, I'd be like, yeah, I don't really need that. I can hold off on that until the week when we have a little extra money. So once I have my amount that I know we are working with for the week, I actually keep on it like on a daily basis. Like, a lot of days we just don't even spend anything. My grocery spending, I know the day of the week I'm going to spend it, and as long as I came within my budget, I don't bother updating it for that because I'm really strict with sticking to the grocery budget. And I know I estimate in what I'm going to spend, and I pretty much spend what I'm going to spend. And gas is pretty predictable too. But if I spend anything else during the week, I will go into my spreadsheet and I'll update it like as soon as I spend it, because I don't want to get to the end of the week and see that those little spending items added up to more than I had left, and I go over budget. Because whenever I go over budget, it's so hard to make it up. Like, it's just so hard to make it up. I used to go over all the time. I didn't have good control in the past on this, and I've gotten so much better over time. But when I first started doing this, I did the afterwards tracking, and I'd always see that we came in over, and then I'd say, all right, next week we really got to try and save and come in under budget next week because we came in so much over last week. And then something would always happen and something would always come up, and that would cause us to come in over budget. So keep tracking your expenses while they go along. And this is especially important too if you're using a credit card to make purchases. You know, your checking, you're going to see the money come out of your checking right away. But don't just like swipe your card for purchases and think you're gonna remember those. Like, you're not going to pay that bill until the end of the month, or, you know, whatever the timing of your billing cycle is on your credit card. So it's super important that every time you swipe a credit card, you record that purchase on your weekly spending. What I do is I put it on my, I put it on my budget as an expense, like as if it came out of my checking account. But then what I do to reconcile the checking account, I will add back that amount as being due to the credit card. So I kind of like add it back to the balance because it hasn't actually come out yet. And then when I go to pay the credit card bill, I already kind of have that money set aside to pay the bill. But it's really, really important to make sure that you're tracking those cards, especially if you have a card that you don't use all the time. Like my main credit card that I use, I have the app, and I check the app all the time. I always make sure that there's nothing that I forgot to record or track in there. And I go on the website too. And I'm always checking to make sure that there's do I have any pending charges that I need to make a note of? Is there anything out there that I didn't think to record? But then I also have like a Target card, and I don't use it. I don't go to Target that often. I like Target, but I just don't really go there that often. It's usually something specific that I'm going to go there for. But when I do go there, I use my Target Red card so that I can get 5% off of the purchase. So the second I get home from Target, I will record that right away and then show it as being payable to Target. I'll record the expense and then show like the amount, the add back that I'm going to have to pay that to Target. Because otherwise, if I forget, then 3 weeks later when the bill comes, I'm like, oh gosh, I got to pay this. Now I got to take it out of this week's budget. I wasn't thinking of that. So yeah, it's really important. Any purchases like that on a credit card, especially if it's not a card that you normally use, like a certain store card that you're going to get like a discount with, make sure that you record that right away. So that's kind of spreadsheet tracking, just keeping your budget and showing what you have left and making a note of every purchase you make and really trying to stick to it. You can be, if you can have a good mindset about sticking to your budget, you really can do it. You just have to I think people tend to just think they need something and then they just buy it. And it seems like there's a lot of times you really don't need to buy certain things. You can hold off. Like if you don't, you have to have the mindset that if I don't have the money for it, I can't buy it. So it's really important to really kind of think that way. And especially if you're using a credit card, make sure, even though you're using a credit card, you can still only spend the money that you have budgeted for that week. So anyway, that's what I do using the spreadsheet. A lot of people also use apps to track their expenses. There's apps that, I think Mint might be one of them. I don't use an app to track my expenses. I think Mint might be one of them. I know there's a lot of apps that you can use. Every dollar is like the Dave Ramsey one. They have a free version. Then I think they have one that you have to get with their, if you sign up for the Dave Ramsey plan, which I don't have that. I follow his advice, but I'm not a member of their, I can't even think of what his program is called right now. But anyway, they have the Every Dollar app. So there's definitely different apps. I would suggest looking up to see what ones are out there and what ones have really good reviews. But you can link those up to your bank account. And I'm assuming you can link them up to your credit card account too. And as you make purchases, it will categorize them for you and show you in real time where you're at compared to your budget. So maybe that's something that might work for you. Like I said, I don't do it that way, but I could definitely see that being helpful. I kind of already had my process in place for quite a while before all the budget apps were really a big thing. So mine works for me and I don't really need to change it right now. So that's the only reason I don't use those, but I would definitely suggest looking into them. Whatever you can do to really keep on top of your spending and make sure you're not spending more than you have allotted for the week is going to really, really help you. And when you see that you come in on budget, it's super exciting because you met that goal for the week, and then you start the next week and it makes you even more motivated to stick to it again. So whatever you can do to help yourself track is good. Anything is better than nothing. So the more things you can do to help yourself stay on budget, the better it'll be for you. Another method, and this is really popular with the Dave Ramsey community, but I've definitely heard other people use it as well that aren't specifically following him, and that's the cash envelope system. So if you really find that you're struggling with keeping on budget and with using a credit card or, just using your debit card, a lot of people have found a lot of success by using the cash envelope system. And that's where you withdraw the cash from your checking account that you have budgeted for each of your categories, and you put it in an envelope. So you might have, say, a gas envelope, a groceries envelope, an eating out envelope, an entertainment envelope. You don't want to go crazy, but you basically set up categories just like you have for your budget, but you have a specific envelope for that. So say if you're going to put like $30 in your eating out envelope for the week, you take out all your money, you put your money in your grocery budget, gas budget, whatever. One of your envelopes would be your eating out. So you put $30 in that envelope. Once that $30 is gone, it's gone. You can't spend any more money on eating out until the next week when you refund that envelope. So by using cash, it really helps you make sure that you're not overspending, because you can't. Now, of course, you could go then use your debit card because you're out of cash. But if you're not going to be disciplined in sticking to your cash envelope system, then it's probably not worth setting it up. But it really works well for people because you can see the cash and you see what's left, and it just kind of puts that limit. Like you can see, okay, and it can help you make decisions too. Like if you have an entertainment envelope with $20 in it, and you know that next week you want to do something that's going to cost $40, then you'll say, you know what, I really want to do that thing next week, so I'm going to save my $20 from this week and then have $40 to spend next week. So it's like a visual tool. So that's another method. Then I also heard, which I actually only kind of heard about this recently. For me, I'm not sure that this would work for me. It would probably make me a little bit nervous, but this might work well for some people. I heard one woman talking about having a separate spending bank account where basically they take their variable spending budget and put it into a separate bank account, and then they can spend from that until it's gone. I'm guessing that they must have some kind of cushion in there, because I wouldn't feel comfortable bringing it down to like a small dollar amount. I'd be really afraid that I would have forgotten to record something and I'd overdraw the account or something like that. But yeah, so that was another method that I heard of. And I guess, they would just keep checking their account and making sure that they weren't overspending. But obviously you'd have to be really meticulous with tracking on that one too, because if you're just using an actual bank account and you're only limiting yourself to being able to spend a certain amount of money, you'd have to you would have to make sure that you're really, really tracking carefully so that you don't overspend on that account. So what happens when you go over budget? My suggestion is not to worry so much about trying to catch up, because it makes it really stressful. And it's very difficult to catch up, because if you have a certain amount of money allotted each week, that's probably what you're typically spending. So what I've tried to do is when I overspend, I used to always try to catch up, and I just never was able to catch up, and I just got more and more stressed, and I never still caught up, so it didn't really help anything. So that's where I came up with my sinking funds, and you can use that or not. But what I think is the most important thing to do is when you come over budget for the week, is to look and really analyze like what happened. Are you coming over budget for groceries every single week? Do you need to relook at how you spend for groceries? Can you adjust that better? Or did you not allow yourself enough money for groceries? Because if you're not allowing yourself enough money in the budget and every single week you're coming in over budget, it's not going to help you. Your budget's wrong. It needs to be adjusted. And if you need to cut back somewhere else, then you need to cut back somewhere else, because you can't have a budget that exceeds the amount of money that you have coming in. So my suggestion when you come in over budget to get yourself back on track is to really look and see what is happening that's causing you to go over budget, and adjust your budget to make sure that it's going to work for you. And if it's those one-time things that happen that you weren't expecting, see if there's a pattern for those. Is it, you weren't expecting a field trip for your kids. Okay, well, I know you weren't expecting it that week or that month, but do they have a field trip every year? maybe you need to start putting aside a small amount so that when something like that comes up, you have the money set aside already. Was it a birthday party your kids had to go to? Was it school pictures? Did you get like, I don't know, I'm just trying to think like any kind of things that don't happen every single month. Like maybe you needed to get like a car maintenance that you weren't expecting. Like, you know, you went in for an oil change and it turned out you needed like some kind of filter or, you know, some other type of service. Maybe you need to have a little bit more set aside. And I know it sounds easy, to just set aside more money, because if you had more money, then you would, you know, it'd be easier to budget. But you'd be surprised if you really, really look at your budget and you really watch your spending. You can just put little amounts aside for these types of things and have them available for when you need them. It's definitely doable. So that's my recommendation for when you go over budget on kind of getting yourself back on track. Don't stress so much about catching up on where you went over, but just focus on what went wrong and how you can make it better for going forward. And then just some tips to like motivate you to avoid overspending. You know, you really need to have your goals in mind, what you're trying to achieve with this. It can't just be to stay on budget, because I love staying on budget and I love when I see that my plan matched up and everything, but it needs to be more than that. It needs to be short-term goals and long-term goals. You know, obviously you need to be planning for long-term, like your retirement, but maybe you're also saving for a vacation. Or maybe you're trying to get yourself to a point where you can increase your 401k contribution. Maybe you're trying to build your emergency fund, so you want to place every dollar extra that you have in that emergency fund. Maybe you're trying to pay off debt. You want to really look at every dollar you're spending and pay down that debt. And with paying off debt, I mean, you really do have to look at everything you're spending, because if whatever you're spending money on, if you still have debt, it's kind of like as if you're taking out more debt to purchase that item, because that's money that you could have paid down on the credit card. So like if you're in debt and you're going out to dinner, you know, that might be something that you want to think about. Like, should we really be going out to dinner when we could easily purchase something at the grocery store and take this money and pay down the card? That's, you know, those are the types of things. So really, really think about what it is that you're trying to get to and help that keep you motivated, because it can be really exciting when you have those goals in mind and you start achieving them and hitting them. And it really is possible. It takes a while, it takes time, but if you are intentional with your money and you watch where every dollar is going, you'd be amazed at what you can do with what you're making. And if you're not making enough, then, you know, you could do side jobs. There's other things you could do to bring in extra money in the short term until you get, you know, a little bit better paying job. But so that's my episode on expense tracking. I hope this is helpful. It's something that I'm really, really passionate about. I love budgeting and finance and trying to meet financial goals. So I hope this is helpful to you. If I would love to hear your feedback. I have a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Lola's Frugal Life. And then there's also a listeners group, facebook.com/groups/Lola's Frugal Life. And that's all one word, no apostrophe. You could join the listeners group, or you could like the Facebook page. You could leave a comment, or you can send me a message directly. If you have any episode suggestions or feedback on the episodes I've done so far, to see if they're helpful or if there's other topics you'd like me to talk about. This is something that I really love to talk about, so I would love to hear what you're looking for information on. So that's it for today, and I thank you so much for listening, and have an awesome day.